I've been a fee-only financial advisor for over 20 years. And during that time, I've certainly talked to over 1,000 retirees and probably closer to 5,000 or 6,000 retirees. And these are the top 3 lessons that they tell me that they wish all of us knew. And so in today's video, I'm going to share that with you so that you can maximize the enjoyment of your retirement and minimize any regrets that you may have. And the first one these retirees would say is your health is much more important than your wealth. And it's really about investing the time, investing the effort, and sometimes investing the money in order to stay healthy. You know, for me, when it comes to the gym, I like to do 3 different things. I work on my muscle mass because as we get older, we lose muscle mass. So going to the gym and lifting heavy things, I like to do. And then I also, a couple days a week, work on my cardio. For me, that's either getting on a treadmill or one of those bicycles, stationary bicycles. And then, at least for me, the aches and pains associated with getting older, I can minimize most of those, if not all of those, with 1 or 2 good deep stretches with a yoga session or 2. So I really encourage you to do that. And unfortunately, not all of us, but many of us can have a large influence on how healthy of a lifestyle, how healthy of a retirement, how active and energetic we feel, you know, up until about 80 by really focusing on how do we take care of ourselves. And then after 80, genetics start to kick in and there's only so much that we can do. But I really want to encourage you that health is a long-term investment. And when you prioritize your health, you're going to extend your lifetime and you're going to increase the enjoyment and the activities that you can do. So that's number 1. Number 2 is don't let your financial goalposts continue to move. So what do I mean by that? You know, many of us have a number. You know, when I get to this number, I'm going to retire. And if you don't have a number, I think it is a good idea to have a number and you can get a rough estimate of what that number is. You can watch some of my videos, how to determine what that is. You can certainly don't use my videos as financial advice, but it'll give you some things to think about. And then I encourage you to work with a fee-only financial advisor. Okay, so we have the number. What do I mean about the goalposts continuing to move? You know, it's just human nature. You know, if few of us did this in our 20s, but if we came up with what number do I need to retire in our 20s, I can guarantee you there's not many guarantees in my industry, but this one is a guarantee. The number you think you're going to need when you're 20 is going to be quite a bit different than the number you think you're going to need when you're 50. So some of that movement of the goalposts is healthy, but at some point we kind of have to lock it down. We have to say, okay, this is a realistic number. I've been with a fee-only financial advisor. We've done our math. This is the number. And so it's not like when you're young and it's moving because you're getting more realistic and, you know, maybe you don't want to share in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 of your best friends anymore. So the number is different. I think that's healthy, but find out, you know, what's a realistic number as you approach sometime in your 40s, certainly by your early 50s at the latest. What is a good number? And then really, unless life changes dramatically and there's a good reason for that number to change, lock it down and say, this is what the number is. Same thing with your age. Have a conversation. If you're married, have a conversation with your spouse, your life partner, somebody, or if you're not married, if you don't have that life partner, somebody else in your life that really knows you, and talk about, you know, what are your goals? What do you want to do outside of work? And what does retirement look like for you? And, you know, what's the best age to do that at? Should you retire at 60? Do you want to retire at 65? And so now you have 2 sets of numbers. You have your financial numbers, and then you have your age. And for many people, what you do is you'd say, okay, I'm either going to retire when I hit one of those numbers, whichever one I hit first. And some people, if you really love your job, and be careful if you say that you love your job, because a lot of people say that they love their job, but you know what? When companies do anonymous surveys, only 20% of people say that they love their jobs. And that's a shame, but that's reality. You know what that number is when they put your name on the survey? Non-anonymously? I don't know what the term for that is. But then in that case, when you have to put your name on the survey, 80% of the people miraculously say that they love their job. So most of us don't love our job so much that we're willing to give up our healthiest and most active years in retirement. And so consciously, we're not willing to do that, but subconsciously, many people do just that. They kind of coast through life on autopilot, or maybe they're suffering from the disease that I call Moore's Law. And no, this isn't the law that says, you know, the number of transistors on a computer computer chip double, every 2 years. This is Moore's law that says that more is always better than less. Not necessarily. In particular, more is not better if what you have to give up to get more is your healthiest and most active years. So you want to be careful, particularly as retirement gets very close, because as it gets closer, you're kind of facing that thought of the transition, and that can be scary for a lot of us. And so we can say, well, I want to have a little more money, but is that really the reason, or is the real reason that we're nervous about this transition? And whether you do this transition at 50 or 60 or 70 or 80, at some point you have to make that transition. You have to leave work and you have to develop that new life. So wouldn't you rather do that in your 50s or your early 60s as opposed to in your 70s? So don't cruise through this time on autopilot. Okay, number 3, I talked earlier about health being more important than wealth. You know what else is more important than money? Your time. And, I talked earlier about young people. Young people have a lot of time, but they don't have a lot of money in order to enjoy that time. And unfortunately, nature plays a cruel trick on us. Later in life, we have more money, but we don't have as much time. So, the real definition of wealth is having both time and money, and that is spelled freedom. Freedom. That is freedom, is when you have both time and money. And I want to caution you, because another thing that's human nature is we look at our current health, we look at our current ability to do certain things, different activities, and we say, let's say you're my age, you're in your 50s. And, fortunately, I'm pretty healthy, I'm pretty active, I can do most of the things that I want to do. And it's just human nature for me to expand that out and say, well, my life will be this way for the next 10 years. My life will be this way for the next 15 years. Maybe, hopefully, but there is no guarantee. And, actually, once things start to decelerate, they tend to decelerate pretty quickly. So just be very cautious. I like to remind people that when you're 60 years old, you have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy active time to enjoy the rest of your retirement, if we're lucky. And 1,000 weeks isn't much time, right? This is roughly 1,000 weeks. Each of these dots is a week. And you look at that and say, wow, Azul, there's a lot of dots there behind you. But this is a chart of how many months you have left once you're 60. How many months of healthy active time do you have? Now there's only 240 months. There's 240. And this chart here is kind of a wake-up call for many of us. This is how many quarters, how many 3-month periods that we have left. And here it's only 80 quarters. And for some of you watching, you're already through, 10 of those or 20 of those. And so don't go through that on autopilot. Look at those dots. Look at how many are, in your case, are colored in already, are already behind you. And make sure that you take full advantage of each and every one of those dots. I call the remaining dots the youth of your senior years. And you want to make sure that you're squeezing all the life out of that you can. Now, hopefully we'll live longer, but it's going to be harder to take those trips to Europe. It's going to be harder to do some of those adventures. It's going to be harder to do a motorcycle ride with your buddies down the California coast. So there's certain things that are best done in your 50s and 60s and are certainly harder and maybe even impossible in your 70s and 80s. So let these dots be a reminder. Time is a limited resource. And you know what? There's always ways to make more money, but there's never more ways to make more time. None of us know how much time we have, but there's never a way to make more time. Okay, I'm going to give you a bonus because I think that this is a super important topic. And this is a bonus that I've never mentioned before. And let me start with just a short story. I want you to visualize a landscape that's curating the perfect garden. And some of this landscaper's plants are doing really well. They're healthy. And so the landscaper's in there really nurturing those plants, making sure they have the right amount of sunshine, the right amount of water. And, other plants, unfortunately, are hurting. Maybe they've been neglected. And now the landscaper is in there giving it some love and really repairing those plants. And then the third plants, you know what? The landscaper, those were never meant to be in this garden. And so the landscaper is pruning those away. So what's number 4? What's the deathbed regret that most retirees have? The deathbed regret that most retirees have typically revolve around relationships. And I want you to think of yourself like that landscape. There's some relationships in your life that are just amazing and they add a lot of value to your life. And I want you to nurture those. And then there's some that for whatever reason are hurting. They're broken and they need to be repaired. And that means you need to invest in those relationships. You need to invest effort. You need to invest time in those relationships. Remember, love is spelled T-I-M-E. So nurture and repair the relationships that are important to you. But then you probably also have relationships in your life where, these people aren't treating you well. They're not not uplifting you. They're not making your life better. And as challenging as this can be to hear, sometimes we just have to prune some of those relationships and say, you know what? I don't want these people in my life. They're always reminding me of something silly that I did years ago, or they're always putting me down. And you know what? Life is too short. If you're watching this video, likely you're similar to me. You have a limited amount of time, enough that you're starting to think about these things. And I do want you to think about relationships and what are the ones that you want to nurture. I also want you to think about, what are the 7 things that you should think about stop doing? And that's what this video is here. 8 things that you should stop doing as you approach your 50s and 60s in order to enjoy life more. It's an important part 2 to today's video, and I hope I'll see you in there. Thanks for watching this. Bye-bye.